Aloha and good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:06 p.m. on Wednesday, July 19, 2023, and I call the special meeting of the Committee on Public Safety to order. I'd like to welcome Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Committee Vice Chair Talba is excused today, and we'd like to also welcome Council Chair Waters and Councilmember Say. Pursuant to Council Rule 8D, I designate Council Chair Waters as a temporary voting member to fulfill quorum. Mahalo, Council Chair. Pursuant to Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways: in person in the council chamber and remotely via video conference or phone. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name for the record and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify in person will be called upon first. When I call your name, please proceed to the podium, press the on-off button at the base of the microphone, and begin by stating your name. I will then give those who did not register an opportunity to testify. After in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to remote testimony and call on the registered testifiers first. When I call your name, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. Begin by stating your name. For those who are testifying by telephone only, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please listen for the prompt to unmute and press *6. For persons standing by remotely who did not register to testify, please utilize the Zoom raise hand button or press *9 on your telephone to indicate your desire to speak. Some friendly reminders and tips: video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are also watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires that all votes at remote meetings be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. Thank you. So first on our agenda, item number 1, Resolution 23-165, relating to the construction of a sanitary sewerage system in the Eva District to be known and hereafter designated as Eva Beach Sewers, Section 4, in accordance with the Improvement by Assessment Ordinance and to comply with Act 125, Session Laws of Hawaii 2017, which established a requirement for the conversion of all cesspools in the state to wastewater management systems by January 2050. The EVA district is currently being sewered by private cesspools. And with us today, we're thankful to have Department of Environmental Services Director Roger Babcock with us today. Aloha, Director.
Good afternoon. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Roger Babcock, Director, Department of Environmental Services, here with Deputy Director and several of our staff from our Wastewater Engineering and Construction Division, which will be running this project. So we have a set of slides, and you have those in front of you, as well as, I think we'll have them up on the screen here in a second. Great, so there they are. So there's just a few slides, so go ahead and go through them, and then we have plenty of time for any questions that you might have. So the Ewa Beach Sewer Improvement District, Section 4, will design and construct the sewer collection system to serve 976 residential units. Those are zoned R5. They currently have their own individual cesspools, so they're not connected to the city sewer system. There's about 150 acres of area that this is covered by, and it's bounded by a residential subdivision, the Hawaii Prince Golf Course, part of the U.S. Naval Reservation, the Pacific Tsunami Research Center, and Kilaha Street, as well as Kaimiloa Elementary School. And then there's a map here on the next slide. And this is actually the last unsewered section in the area. And it is a pretty large area. So the map shows where it is, and you can kind of see who the neighbors are there, including the school. So the next slide shows the Hawaii cesspool prioritization map. That comes from the Department of Health website. And it shows that the red dots there are all of the, they kind of blur together. They're all the cesspools. And the red indicates a priority 1 designated cesspool. So they have priority 1, 2, and 3, with priority 1 being the highest, meaning that it has known impacts to groundwater or surface waters or seawater. And so the state went about a prioritization of all cesspools throughout the island, all 53,000, and these are part of the priority 1 cesspools on the island. So we are addressing it. The next slide shows a little layout. So what's involved in a project like this is putting sewer pipes in the streets in a network to be able to connect all the people. And so you can kind of see the outline of the area there, and those are streets, and then all of the little rectangles are individual lots, the 973 lots. And a little bit harder to see are the lines on there. There are different colors, red and green and yellow, and those signify different pipes and different sizes of pipes. And so there's kind of a summary there that maybe you can read. There are a lot of 6-inch pipes. All of these pipes are PVC, polyvinyl chloride, so they're not concrete or steel or something like that. They won't corrode. And so most new sewers are like that. So you see that there's about 51 or 52,000 feet of 6-inch PVC pipe, okay? So there's about 5,000 feet in a mile. So this is 50,000 feet, so quite a bit, almost 10 miles of 6-inch pipe. Well, sorry, 6 inches, 24,900. 8 inches is 27,000. Sorry, I grouped those together. There's some 12-inch pipes, some 16, some 18, and 20. So where all the sewage will come from the upper part of this picture down to the lower left, where there's that little piece sticking down, that's where the 20-inch pipe is that leaves this newly to-be sewered area and goes on to Fort Weaver Road, where it will connect to an existing trunk sewer. And then it heads over to the Ewa Beach wastewater pump station and gets pumped up to Honolulu wastewater treatment plant. So that's what the collection system will look like. That does include that 6-inch pipe. Most of that is connecting from the street, pretty much in the middle of the street is where the sewers are, the sewer mains. And then there are laterals which connect from the pipe in the middle of the street up to the property line. And we install all of that. That's the lateral, the part that the city owns. And then the homeowners have to connect to that pipe from their house to that pipe. And I'll say more about that, and I'm sure you might have questions. The next slide is just a divider that's telling us we're going to look at costs. So the costs are on the next slide here. And so we do have an estimated construction cost. I believe we're 95% design. Yeah, so it's a very good cost estimate. This is our estimate, the engineer's estimate. And then, of course, the construction, it will go out to bid, and we'll award to the best price from a contractor. So that's the construction cost. It also shows the land, engineering, inspection, advertising, and incidentals. That costs some money, $3.8 million. Then there is an assessment. So this is what the homeowners, each property will owe. So in ordinance, when we bring a sewer to you, then there is this assessment, which is partly to pay for a little bit of the existing sewer system. And it's 25 cents per square foot. And that's just an average. A lot of the lots are 5,000 square feet, but it will use the actual number for each property. And so each property is paying about $1,250. You could think of that as a connection fee, but it's actually called an assessment. So that kind of, that would be income. And then there are additional costs to be borne, as I mentioned, by the property owners. And that means they need to connect the house plumbing, they need to disconnect their existing cesspool, and they need to extend the pipe out to the sidewalk to where our stub-out sewer lateral will be located. So they have to install that lateral and a clean-out at that location. And a clean-out is a place where we can access and clean out any clogs in the line of our part of the lateral. And then they also need to fill their existing cesspool, which is called closure. And there are guidelines on that in the Uniform Plumbing Code, and it's called appropriate abandonment, I think is the word of the way that's done. So I'd be happy to answer more questions about that if you want later. Keep going then, we have the process flow chart for the process, and I know it's a little bit small there, the process that you have to go through to put new sewers in an improvement district. And there's a lot of steps there. And I think probably your staff are familiar with this process. There are several steps that we have to go to. This is really the first step is to get through this intent to do this sewer district. So maybe we won't necessarily spend any more time on that, but there are several steps, and we'll see an abbreviated schedule on the next couple slides down. Here we go. So today where we're at is the resolution of intent to do this project. And we hope that would be then adopted soon. It has to go to full council from here, so in the August meeting. Then we have already the preliminary report, and that also, takes another resolution where it's adopted. So we'll be giving you that report as soon as you pass the intent with full council. We have that available, of course. Then that another resolution is required to adopt that, and then there'll be another resolution adopting approving, adopting, and ratifying the final report and a call for bids, for construction bids. So we're anticipating that would be in February. Then we would solicit the bids, get the bids, hope to do a bid opening in June. So now we're almost a year from now. Then once we are ready to accept one of the bids, then there's another resolution to accept that bid, hopefully in July. And then there's a assessment report that happens a few months after that in November. Assessment bill then would be signed by the mayor, and then we would give notice to proceed to a contractor in July of '25. We have 2 years budgeted for construction. So folks will be actually getting sewers available in approximately August of '27. So that's 3 years from now. And at that time is when the homeowners would need to be connected. And according to ordinance, once we notify folks that a sewer is available on their street, they have 90 days to connect. So they'll actually need to have done some work before that in order, there's a building permit required and stuff like that to do that. So there will be some planning and some public outreach and stuff to make sure all those things happen. And so that is the last slide, and I would be happy to answer any questions, and I have lots of support if I can't answer a question.
Thank you so much, Director Babcock. Members, we are open to questions at this time. Does anyone have questions for Director Babcock? Chair Waters?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Director.
Good afternoon.
So I'm a huge proponent of cesspool conversion, but for folks watching at home, can you tell us why cesspool conversion is necessary?
Yeah, thank you. So cesspools are a very simple form of wastewater disposal. It is an excavation in the ground. Typically, it's quite a bit deeper than it is wide. It may be 10 feet in diameter, typically, or 10 to 12 feet, but it could be about 30 feet deep. Though it doesn't have solid walls or a solid floor. The floor is permeable, so it's meant to infiltrate water into the ground. Same with the walls. The walls typically would have either rings with large pukas in them or cinder blocks that are stacked with a lot of openings. So it's meant to be a device which infuses the sewage, raw sewage, into the ground. And so there isn't any treatment other than solids would be retained in in this excavation. And periodically those solids, paper, toilet paper, anything that doesn't dissolve is going to have to be pumped out periodically. So the issue here and in many places is that the groundwater is very close to the ground surface. And so in this area and many other areas, especially coastal areas, it's kind of a direct discharge into the groundwater, and then the groundwater is connected, to the ocean. So it's the groundwater is flowing towards the ocean. So there's beaches there and stuff like that. In this area, that groundwater isn't used as potable water because it's a coastal aquifer that's is salty. So it's not really a drinking water contamination issue. It's more of a potentially the ocean and ocean water contamination. So it's important to the state has mandated that we replace all cesspools by 2050, and part of that will be done by cities' SID projects, but part of it will be done by individual homeowners who will have to find their own on-site upgrade solution.
Thank you. So basically, in this neighborhood, the issue is possibly this sewage getting to the ocean. But in other cases, on other parts of the island, the issue could be that, plus infiltrating our drinking water.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's important to take care of this. I'm just curious, how old is this subdivision? Do you know?
It's been there a long time.
Yeah. I mean, because was that what we used to do?
So early 70s.
Early 70s. So why would DPP, and I'm asking you to speculate, why would DPP, why would the city grant permits for subdivisions that aren't connected to our sewer system?
Yeah, so
1970s doesn't seem that long ago. We had sewer systems.
we did. But actually, cesspools have, there was kind of an interesting article in Silver Beat recently about the cesspool history and how not that long ago, we were still installing cesspools throughout the islands. And so it is, it's unclear. I think that it was called out as an issue, for a long time, but it took a long time actually to get action and to ban new cesspools. New cesspools were only abandoned, and I don't want to get the year too wrong, but it's around 2015 to 2017, not very long ago. I think that they were difficult to put in for a longer period of time than that, but they weren't actually banned, new ones banned until not very long ago. And then not long after that, they were, the statewide ban came from the ledge that they all needed to be upgraded.
Do you find in doing these types of projects that the communities affected by the conversion are anti-conversion, meaning they don't want to do it because they incur added costs? Is that accurate?
Yeah, so I'm not sure we can say. We haven't done any projects like this in quite a few years. So, but you can, I think you're right. We can anticipate that there's two components of the costs. One, there's an upfront cost to do the connection, and then they're going to start getting a sewer bill, from us like everybody else. And currently they don't have that. And so as part of the state mandate, to eliminate cesspools and this public health risk, it's important that we, do our part. This improvement district is actually, the cost looks kind of high, but it's actually probably one of the lowest cost projects that we'll have like this because it's a high density, it's very flat, it's easy construction. And so, other places that are along the coast, fewer homes, further distances to the treatment plant are going to be much more expensive. So,
Do want to note on maybe page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, estimated construction cost $50 million.
correct.
So the $50 million, where does that come from?
So this will come from the sewer fund. So we'll be paying that with a combination of, I believe this would all be, I don't think this would be bond funded, right? No, it would probably not be bond funded. It would be cash funded, which means it's from sewer fees.
Okay, so and whose district is this? Whose council district is this?
I believe this is Augie Tolba's district.
Tolba.
Yeah.
Any input from the council member? I noticed that he's not here today. But any input from him or his community with regard to this conversion? And yeah.
Right. So far, we haven't started our sort of our outreach campaign, for this, but that is an important part of moving forward. We'll be going to the neighborhood board and talking to whoever we can talk to about this project to get the word out. But we haven't started that yet. Yeah.
Okay. Last thing, so the $50 million, basically that comes from all the ratepayers across the entire island, right?
Correct.
It's not just going to be borne or paid for by the ratepayers from Augie Tolba's district.
That is correct. So each of them will pay the assessment, maybe about $1,200. That only adds up to 1.2 million of the 50 million. This would be similar, though, to all of our other projects. So we're upgrading sewers and pump stations and stuff all over the island, and we use the same pot of money to, so everybody's paying for the whole system.
Right. Do you know how many cesspools, last question, Chair, how many cesspools there are still on Oahu Island?
It is somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000. I don't have the exact number.
Okay, so this project will significantly decrease the amount of
Yep.
cesspools that we have. Okay, thank you, great job. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Yes, Councilmember Say.
Okay, Director Babcock. The first question is that, is the community aware of it, of this new sewage system?
I don't believe, Ed, have we? No, not yet, council member. Yeah.
That's no problem. The other question was the technology. Would it have been easier or cheaper if we went septic tanks?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the question is, would it be cheaper to do septic tanks? So, if you look at the unit cost, we're looking at about $50,000 per property here to put in the sewers. And then, of course, we'll be maintaining, all of that like we do the rest of the system forever. And they would be part of that, of the system and getting and paying for that service. But if anything goes wrong, we fix it or we upgrade it and all that kind of stuff. To do their own individual system may be perhaps a similar cost or maybe even a little bit less, but then that would be borne by them, and they also would not become sewer customers. So that is technically possible. And they could, folks there could even, but once we bring the sewers, they don't have a choice. They need to connect to our system. So, yeah.
Okay, the next question, in trying to support the project, has our state legislature looked at this project from the perspective of the state senator and state representative? And the reason why is that 8 or 9 years ago, maybe some of your staff can, attest to it, that the state legislature did set aside $50 million in replacement of cesspools. And somehow the beneficiaries were only the ones that were very close to the ocean because they had the upfront money to qualify for replacement of these cesspools with septic tanks, and then they got the credit to offset it. The only reason why I asked this is that this is a state mandate. And is it a federal mandate also that we have to get rid of all cesspools? Or is it the state's mandate that we get rid of all?
Yeah, it's not a federal mandate.
Okay,
it's state. Yeah.
And then one final thought. I truly believe in what you're doing. And you'll probably have a pump station, if I'm not correct, because this is a large amount of solid waste that's being pumped to Honolulu. And if you notice, if everplanes are flat, there is no gravity flow.
Right. So this project will flow by gravity into a section of pipe on Fort Weaver Road, and it flows by gravity over to the Eva Beach pump station, and then it'll be pumped from there. So it doesn't involve a new pump station. And also that pump station has capacity for this flow, so it doesn't need upgrades for this project.
So I think for my final thought is this: if you folks are going to go through with this project, is it possible to contact the elected officials at the state level to see if they could come up with some funding also on behalf of the households? Because they did it in the past.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah, so that's a good question. We could ask. There's quite a bit of precedent, though, for the state not doing that. The state did do, not this past year, but the year before, they did set aside $4 or $5 million for a grant program,
Yes.
which is being administered now. And it's for $20,000. It's a rebate. You have to do all the work and finish it and supply receipts. And I think they could fund 250, and they set up a website, and it opened in April, and they allocated all the money within a few days. So that's statewide though. That's not just Oahu, right? So statewide, there's 58,000 folks. There was an income test. You did have to meet certain income limits, be below certain limits. So far, the state hasn't decided, to make a really large investment in this effort. Statewide, it's a couple of billion, $3 billion, infrastructure question, and there are, I guess, sort of equity issues about who really should be paying, for this and financing it. So with the folks that get connected to our system, they start paying a sewer fee, and so they're sort of amortizing the cost over a number of years, a fairly big number of years, paying back for the system and contributing. So that way, there's there's sort of some cost recovery. If so, whether that would meet whatever other state priorities there are in terms of being, a good way to spend, the taxpayers' money, it would be up to the ledge to decide. But so far, they haven't indicated that they're willing to take a big bite out of that.
Well, for me, I would say this: if you're going to be organizing this particular project with 976 lots of families, 976 families, all I would recommend is that let the state born the accessible properties in the improvement district, which is your 25 cents instead of 25 cents per 1,000 or 5,000 square foot. Bring it up to $1 a square foot as a good faith effort from the state. That's what I'm saying. Does it make sense on the financing? You know what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to relieve ourselves of the 50 million.
Yeah.
Because you told us a month ago that our biggest project that we have on the books in the next 5 to 6 years is the secondary treatment plant at Sand Island. So I don't want to burden you with more expense. How's that? So that's the reason why I'm asking these questions, because it is a state mandate, and I truly feel they should put, some money into the coffers in supporting this project of 976 homeowners. And that's all.
Yep. Thanks.
If you need help, I think Chair Okimoto has a lot of contacts with the state legislature, so maybe she can get the funding wherever.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Say. Councilmember Tam?
Thank you. Building on Chair Waters' question, for those tuning in at home, what resources or maps are available that show the locations of the other, 8,000 or 9,000 cesspools around the island?
Yeah, so it's referenced on that slide. I guess it's about the 7th slide or something that shows the Hawaii cesspool prioritization map. So there's a tool. That's a tool essentially that you can find. I think probably the easiest way to find it is the State Department of Health wastewater branch. There's a link there. The link is available other places too, but I think that might be the easiest place to find it. And you can look and you can zoom in on your house and see whether, people probably know if they have a cesspool or not, but they could see whether it's a priority 1 or a 2 or a 3.
Okay, and then, I think it makes sense for these 976 homes that are all packed together very densely. What remedies are available for those who maybe are sort of a leftover and have, one cesspool, or maybe it's a small cluster and some subdivision that was built long ago with 3 or 4 of them? I mean, what can be done for them? because obviously for these 976, it makes sense to do it all together.
Yeah, so we have some other sewer improvement district projects in early phases of planning and design in different places on the island. There are a few one-offs, like you said, council member, in certain places, and we'll be continuing to look at those and see what some possibilities are. We're just in the process of looking at a couple in like Makiki area is one I remember. And so you're right. There's some of those where it's feasible. We would be connecting them up to the sewer, or we would be bringing a sewer so that they could connect. There are some criteria in ordinance about a certain maximum distance. If you're beyond a certain distance, then you're not required to connect. So we either need to extend the sewer if possible or do something else. So there's, yeah, so folks that do have cesspools, though, should know that, or hopefully they're aware, or there's been more awareness that there is this mandate to ban all cesspools, including the ones in use now, by 2050. So folks do have some time, and hopefully they'll start to look into that. On that Department of Health webpage, there's a bunch of other resources and guidance on what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. I think it lists consultants and stuff that you can use, and contractors, and lots of different things like that. So there's quite a bit of work has been done. There was a cesspool conversion working group that was set up by the Ledge the year that they they put the ban in place. And I was on that working group, as were the folks from all the islands and Department of Health, and they worked for 3 years and came up with a big report with a bunch of recommendations on how to move forward. So there's actually a lot of information available. I think a lot of folks will just skip right to the end where it tells you how much it's going to cost them, and then those folks may or may not be hoping that the city or the other counties will bring a sewer, to them. But that doesn't make it free, as you know. They do have to close their own cesspool, which is going to cost some money, and they have to have a lateral installed, and then pay a connection fee in order to get connected up.
Thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Director Babcock, if I could just kind of continue along with some of the questions that have been asked.
Yeah.
And that was one of my questions on this slide, where you have the additional cost to be borne by the property owners.
Yeah.
With a question mark. So you just mentioned that it's their responsibility to pay for it, but is the city actually doing the work for it, or who will be doing this, the filling of the pools, cesspools, and the connection of the plumbing to the new sewer? Is this a city project, and then they have to pay the city?
No, so the city won't be doing that work. So it's on private property. So the Sewer Improvement District, the project, the $50 million project, brings all the sewers into the streets, and it will pass by everybody's house, and it will install a lateral. That's the piece of pipe, the smallest diameter pipe, the 6-inch diameter that goes in from the street, which is at least 8 inches typically, and those are deeper. It comes up fairly close to the ground surface, not at the ground surface, but few feet below, and it stubs out, and that's the extent of the city. So all that work is done in the right-of-way. So we do that all in our, essentially in our property. And then anything beyond that is the responsibility of the homeowner. So they are going to, there's really two parts. One is the lateral, their own personal lateral that will be on their property, which will probably be PVC also, to connect to the house. So they'll disconnect from what goes into the cesspool, and they'll connect to a new line that will be buried, and a trench has to be dug, a new pipe put in there, and stuff by a contractor. That portion of the work does require a building permit. So they are going to have to get typically what would be done is they would hire an engineer, and the engineer would prepare a plan. It's a very simple plan, but it has to be a plan. They got to stamp it, they got to submit it to DPP and get a building permit and get that approved, and then they would facilitate getting a contractor to do the work. Typically, the same contractor would also be hired to close the cesspool. So what that means is it needs to be cleaned out, pumped out. There's some stuff in there, got to be cleaned out. Then it needs to be backfilled. That's usually done with gravel, vibrated and compacted a little bit so that it's firm. And then the opening, which is not necessarily the whole diameter, but it's almost 1 foot deep of concrete is poured. So that essentially makes it unusable. And so that's the abandonment exercise that has to happen. So there are costs, associated with each of those tasks, and they, in general, engineers and folks are reluctant to give numbers for what that might cost, because there's a lot of variability depending upon the site conditions, how long the lateral is, as well as whether, for example, they have a rock wall that you either have to tear down or go under or do something like that, right? Or they could have other things that are in the way. These laterals generally are always a straight line, and so you got to get stuff out of the way. Or there could be big trees. There could be lots of different things that make site conditions that make it difficult to give a blanket sort of estimate of what that's going to cost. I am prepared to do that, though, but I do want to say that it really does vary a lot. And if you want to sort of take into account all the variability, then you can get some really big potential numbers. But it is also possible that it could cost not all that much, but that's all relative depending on, to the homeowner. So I did go ahead and talk to contractors to find out what the going rate is today, not necessarily in 27 or 29 when this is done. But my understanding is you could get a cesspool filled and concreted for about $4,000. It's not a trivial amount of money, but it's not necessarily a huge amount. Engineers that do this kind of work for a lateral get the building permit, do the design, get the building permit, and do all that work. Typically, $2,000 to $3,000 for the engineer's work, assuming it's not super complicated, anything weird going on. And then the lateral itself, we usually would use a per foot of length kind of number, and that would be $50 to $75 a foot is about kind of a going rate today. So that's $2,500 to $3,500 for the actual construction of the lateral. So you're looking at between $8,500 and $10,000 per lot. Now, if this is a tight neighborhood, it's fairly dense, if folks got together, there could be some economies of scale, perhaps. Significant, I think, perhaps economies of scale, if they were to coordinate the work and get it done by contractors that were doing multiple units and stuff. So,
Thank you. I was going to ask if you had an estimate amount. You mentioned that you plan to do outreach to the community. What exactly would you plan to do other than, because I envision myself, like if I were a resident here, I actually would have no idea of anything that would need to be done. I would have no concept of filling a cesspool or getting a lateral, getting a permit. And then that's a lot of money that's going to be expected of these homeowners. So how do you plan on educating them, and when would they need to? I know that I'm guessing, which is my other question, have this type of project been done before in the city that you're aware of? And what did they do? How long does it take? So these homeowners, they're going to have to be informed and educated and then prepare to have the system transitioned over.
Yeah, I would say, fairly soon, we would start to do some outreach. First is awareness of the project, because there will be inconveniences during our construction project as well. We'll be digging up all the streets. There will be and digging into, there'll be access issues and things like that that will be significant, during, and it's be over 2 years, right? It's a fairly long thing, so there's that issue. In addition to, how to get, the work done, their part of the work done, I would envision that we'd be doing a lot of outreach and workshops, and we probably will be able to get some of the industry folks to be involved with that, and essentially be available as the resource for them, who they'd be able to use. Now, we're not going to promote people or something like that, but I can envision maybe holding community meetings or workshops or something like that where we get everybody there, say these are the steps, this is what's have to happen, and this is how much time we're going to need, because I believe probably they would want to get their permits in about a year before they need to actually have the construction completed in order to get them approved.
And I think that's a great, it's really good in all of the neighborhood boards that I've gone to, and even in here, a lot of the feedback is when neighborhoods feel like they're not informed or they weren't properly educated, that's when the frustration comes. Now, I'm not saying that the resources weren't available, so I think in many cases it's just making sure that we're consistent with getting the information out there. You mentioned, and this was one of my questions, when they're transitioning over, because this is a project that will take some time, but so let's say they have to start, is there like an overlap of them closing down their current cesspool to when they will have access to the new sewage system?
Right, yeah, so they wouldn't disconnect, they would get the connection in place first to the sewer system. So sewer system got to be finished, then they got to connect. Then right when that connection's done is when they would fill in the cesspool and it would be abandoned at that time. So yeah, it can't happen until that sequence. Yep.
And you mentioned the 90 days to connect, and that's when the sewage feeds would start. How does that work also? When do they start?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, council member, but yeah, it would be once they're connected, they're going to start to get a sewer bill on their water bill. Right now, they get just a water bill, and there's no line there for environmental services. So that would start. I would assume it can't start until we're actually providing the service, till they're actually connected, and that would be as the building permit would be closed out. And it would be accepted. I think that's probably when the billing starts.
So back to a question I just asked, has this been done before? I know that the mandate, was it 2018 when the mandate came along?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
But this is going to be like a project that hasn't been done before, or hasn't been done before on the island.
There have been other projects, I think much smaller, in the past. I don't think there's been an SID project for a number of years. 1990s apparently. So it's been a long time, and but like I said, we're going to be doing more of these. We're not going to be sewering everybody. This is kind of almost like a best case scenario of a location where we can do this relatively easily. There are some other important locations, though, where we have studies that are either partly underway or being initiated, and they are in unsewered areas near existing treatment plants that we have typically, where it would be feasible and cost-effective for us, meaning the city and all the residents, to connect folks. There'll be a lot of remote folks where that's not going to be feasible. The cost per unit would be double or triple this amount, and that wouldn't be the right way necessarily to spend our money. Or it would in some sort of a prioritization process with all of our other projects would come out low, right? And it may end up eligible at some point in the future, but yeah.
You mentioned that to curb the cost, homeowners or residents could kind of combine with other units or other neighbors. Do you have a system in place or a plan? Because I just envision a bunch of people coming around not knowing what to do again and saying, oh, I want to go with this neighbor or that neighbor. But how do you plan? How could that be possible to, again, address the cost of the transition for the homeowner?
Yeah, so I think, we wouldn't be taking an active role probably in that. However, I think we would be facilitating and trying to set up meetings. There's a lot of interest in cesspool conversion. There's some nonprofits, there's people interested in the financing, and there was the cesspool conversion working group. And so I think, and legislators and stuff like that too, that were very much into this issue. So I think there will be quite a bit of assistance to help folks, when we get closer to this, becoming a reality. We do have to get through several resolutions before we actually are able to, select a contractor and award, for our project.
Thank you, Director. Members, are there any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam and then Councilmember See.
Thank you, Director. So as part of this, you're going to be digging up the roads, installing sewer lines. The neighbors are going to be installing their laterals from their homes into those sewer lines. It occurs to me that when all is said and done, the roads are going to be pretty beaten up. And so are you aware of whether your department or DDC has plans to come in and repave this area afterwards so it's not all bus up in Kapolkahi for everybody?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we would, we'll definitely talk to DDC about that and see, if what their schedule is for a project anyway. And that's a great point. Make sure we coordinate. And for example, they don't pave, the year before, repave the year before, right? So that would be the coordination point. And it's also possible if BWS needs to do any work in the area or anything else, any other upgrades planned. So yeah, we'll definitely look into that. We may already have looked into that, but yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Councilmember See.
Not to put you on the spot, Director Babcock, this 50 million that we're talking about, will it supplant projects that may be in the budget? What I'm saying is that you folks have a program already in place of replacing sewer lines, which is fantastic. I just don't want that 50 to supplant what we are already doing on a yearly basis.
Yeah. So thanks for that question. No, so this is an important part of our, capital program. This project to get these folks onto sewer, and we have capacity. So even though it's a lot of money, it's a relatively low cost to get this many new customers and protect the environment, make sure that there's not having an impact on the ocean water. And so I could say no, it's not supplanting any other projects. We have an active program, of course, as you know, of sewer rehabilitation, sewer replacement, island-wide in all the different basins, and we will be continuing with that. So,
okay, and one final question that I have, and this is on, I forget what page this is, but it deals with the new collection system, and I was just intrigued, like for the 6-inch PVC sewer line, which is 24,902 feet. Do you consider that the laterals? No. Oh, yes.
yes, yeah, that would be the laterals.
Okay. And then the 27,681, the 8-inch PVC sewer pipeline, that's also the laterals.
No, those would be the mains, some of the mains in the further reaches. So the further that you get away from Fort Weaver Road, so the biggest pipe, the 20-inch pipe, is right there next to Fort Weaver Road.
I see.
And then it goes down to an 18-inch pipe as kind of a backbone, and then they get smaller and smaller the further you go away. But the smallest ones are 8 inches, and those would be in the streets. Those are the mains.
No, I just wanted to say thank you because with the projects that you've been doing, every week I get the report in regards to sewer line, manholes, etc. That's the kind of stuff I think your mayor's representative at the neighborhood board should highlight also. Right?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Council Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. Just one last question. The estimated cost of improvements to be borne by all accessible properties in the improvement district is 25 cents times 5,000 square feet, so basically 25 cents per square foot. How did you come up with the 25 cents charge?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's in ordinance. So it's specified. We can't change that, or and it's not zero, and it's not $1, but it's 25 cents. So that's just what's in there.
Okay. When it's convenient, could you just refer us to the exact ordinance? I'd be interested in looking at that.
Yes.
You
And
don't need to give it to
probably-
us now,
Yeah,
but I'm
okay.
happy-
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll email
offline.
it to you, but I think it's 14, I don't know, we can, section. Ordinance section. It's okay. Yeah, we'll email it to you. It's in the sewer part.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Waters. If you could email it maybe to all of the council
I
members,
will,
could that be?
yes. Yep.
Thank you, Director Babcock.
Yeah.
No further questions? Okay, thank you. So we'll now proceed, mahalo, Director Babcock. We'll now proceed with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Madam Clerk, do we have any registered testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Any non-registered in-person testifiers?
Chair, we have Angela Young
Oh, okay.
remotely.
So online we have Angela Young. Angela, are you there?
Yes.
Aloha.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the City Council council members. So I wasn't very sure about how it works, this subject matter of environmental protection and how it connects to like cesspools and sanitary systems. So I performed some research, and there was a law from 2016, Governor David Ige's law to stop the building of new cesspools. And well, because there was a lot of heat from the public was doing like protests. So I'm wondering, how will more work be performed if there can't be any more new cesspools, or does private cesspools from this resolution fall outside of the category of cesspools that can't be built? So irregardless, whatever's happening there with the cesspools, as the construction begins, Chapter 14 of ROH provides instructions that council must, by resolution, request the mayor to direct the director of environmental services to report to the council and to prepare and to furnish surveys, maps, plans, and drawings. And the procedures must align with Act 125/2017, which has a set of requirements for conversion for all cesspools in the state to approve wastewater management systems before 2050. I look forward to the work being performed from the city, and if there are any organizations who are defending this work to manage sanitary systems and to protect special coastal resources, to make sure every beach is clean and accessible. And, you know, I volunteered around the island. And
Angela, if you could wrap up your testimony, we'd really appreciate it. Yeah, if you could wrap
Okay,
up.
yeah. Okay, in conclusion, I volunteered with the Clean Water Hero. Augie organizes and coordinates with Clean Water Hero, the Stormwater Division, with Miss American Scholar, and Be Respectful and Value Everyone to clean up the channels at the beaches. And also there are a lot of other council members who volunteer at the Clean Water Hero. Okay, thank you.
Mahalo, Angela. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else standing by remotely or in person who would like to testify at this time?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing no one else, members, we are now in discussion. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-165 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. And with that being done, mahalo again, Director Babcock and your team. Everyone, mahalo for being here and for your participation today. There being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.